That's even more disgusting. Hello.
Hello.
Say hi to everybody. Say louder. I'm doing it. It's a weird science Q&A. I'll call you back. Okay. Robert Downey Jr. No. No, he's filming Iron Man, making $20 million right now. Let's not bug him.
Yeah, right. That's reverse for a VI. Dickhead seats.
Glad to see there's a big crowd here today. How's everybody doing? Good. First question. You know, I'm glad you asked that question. Let's get it started here. For me to pour icy on Anthony Michael Hall's head. That's the first scene I've ever shot as an actor. Okay, and
I just totally ruined this other story.
It's my second scene I ever. Actually, you're right. And it was dancing. Well, that was a print commercial with George Clooney and Grant Kramer, star of Killer Clowns from Outer Space with Suzanne Snyder. Where was I? That was the first scene I ever shot in a film. And what was really funny about that is I had the Slurpee and I pour it for our take. And then when it cuts down to Anthony Michael Hall and Alon Mitchell Smith, there was a guy with a bucket of Slurpee. If you'll notice, I pour a cup of Slurpee, and then when it cuts to them, a whole freaking bucket of Slurpee lands on their head. A funny story about that too is I had gone to acting class. I had shot a commercial. I had rehearsed with the cast at Universal Studios, and then we flew into Chicago, which is where we shot all the exteriors in the mall scene. And I was really stoked because this was my first feature film. It was a studio film. John Hughes at the time was already becoming an iconic director, especially in this sort of teen genre. And Joel Silver was one of the biggest producers in Hollywood, etc. So needless to say, I was super excited and super grateful to be there. Totally revved up, totally jazzed to do this scene. And the biggest lens I've ever seen to this day comes up on this crane into my face, and I just freeze. I am just like, oh my God, all my excitement turned into nervous butterflies, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I looked over at Robert Downey Jr. and I was like, dude, what do I do? And he just goes, be yourself! And like the whole mall just looked at him like, you're a freak. And they laughed, nervous laughter. And I was telling Suzanne and Judy about this is the best thing that could have happened for me at that point was not for him to give me some kind of acting tip, because he was already he was a veteran. He had been doing films with his father since the age of 7. This was about his 7th or 8th feature film. I already knew to look to him as a mentor because he was a fantastic, very brilliant, very uninhibited actor. And just by him showing me that and being just that uninhibited in that moment, let me know all inside, and just to be comfortable and to relax and to do what got me there. So that whole scene, when I poured the Slurpee, the only thing that was scripted was $5. That was the only thing that John Hughes had written, $5, question mark. So John comes over after Robert had just done that like spectacle of a situation, And he goes, "Oh my God, are you guys crazy?" "Yes, you are. I'm glad I cast you. I love you. Just shoot it." So we shot that scene, and that's where that whole thing came up. Finsky, $5. Towel World, that whole thing was all improvised. Because Downey pretty much gave me permission to just relax and just be Max. So, was that a long-winded explanation? Which leads me to my next film. No.
No, it's okay, we've got an hour to fill in, so keep going.
Well, shooting in Chicago was really cool for me because Northbrook Court, which is where we shot the first scene, was where I shot because I grew up there. So I was at the mall that I've been shopping at since I was a little girl. And my mom was there, and my grandpa was there, and everybody, my mom, my grandpa, and my family. And it was really cool. And then the house where we shot the house scene was a grade school and high school friend of mine. So we walked up to the house, and I was like, "Mr. Mulder!" And so that was really cool too, because I was at my friend's house when we shot. So that was kind of fun.
Well,
There's a question right there.
You got like that scene at the end where the whole house party going on, the sequence with the bikers and stuff. Like, was that really the shooting that really script and like when cut, like things were silent or when you go around, or was like what was the atmosphere of the shooting? Was that super fun? People go crazy, so on their own too, or what was that like?
actually, nobody said a word because I was scared shitless of me. No. It was great. John Hughes is a big kid, or was. He was just like a big kid. And his whole set was like a playground. Everybody had a lot of fun. A lot of what you saw on the film was what people were doing. People were just enjoying themselves. It was a party atmosphere. We all had a lot of fun. I mean, I never got to do all the stuff that all these guys got to do, because when I came onto the film, I was shooting in the studio. And I got brought in from Australia and sort of landed on my butt and told, this is what you're doing. And I had no idea what the film was going to be or what it was going to be like. All I knew was I was supposed to send up a character I'd already played, which I really didn't want to do. But I got into it because it was just such an outlandish thing, and just so way out there that it was fun. And all these guys were just amazing to work with. And it was a really, really great experience. And John Hughes, I just adored him. I met him once in Los Angeles, and I never met any of the cast until I arrived on the set. I didn't even know who any of the other characters within my group were. I had no idea who they were. Most of them become very firm friends to this day. All the cast, whenever we see each other, it's like we haven't been 20 years ago. Everybody's just so, yay, it's just so cool being around each other. And that was the atmosphere of the film, except for her. Everybody else is really cool with her. And no, that was it. I mean, I'm sure they'll agree that we just had a lot of fun doing it. He was a great guy to be around, and he put together a great cast and a good movie. And he's gone, and we hate that. But, all the good ones die young. That's why we're still here.
But that scene was a long scene. It did take a long time to shoot it. It was a long scene, and I remember when, was it the piano that went out the chimney or something?
Yeah.
I remember when they were trying to shoot. I mean, it was technical stuff. I mean, it did take time, and
I just remember one.
I used to burn his chest
For about a week, yes.
I was in the
Knew me
hospital.
intimately by the time we finished that scene. Now, the funny thing was that I came from a culture from Australia where we shot films very cheaply. We did, films weren't enormously big budget. Mad Max was shot for $1.3 million. So I wasn't used to the access of Hollywood. And when I arrived on the set, the first day, I stood there and looked at a double-story house that could be taken in half and went, shit. And then they wanted this huge rocket, and they had one. And I was like, this is unbelievable. Just on the rocket alone, I could have made 3 movies in Australia. To me, it was just unbelievable. I was like the kid in the candy store. I was so with everything that was going on. It was my first movie in America. It was the first time I'd been here. And I didn't understand that when they wanted to do it, take a piano out of the top of the thing, they did it. To me, that would have been, a little toy. No, they told pianos and people and things. And so yeah, that was my introduction to the world and to her head a lot.
What was your favorite scene?
I would say, I don't really have a favorite. Each one of them, I have different memories I have fond memories of each scene, but for different reasons. So, for instance, the mall was really fun because that was our first day filming, and we had all spent 2 weeks together in rehearsal. So it was like, we're finally shooting now, and it was just so much fun to be there as a group. So loved that. Alone in the room with Alon after the party, not the bedroom one, but the one where where I asked him if he could kiss me. That was really nice because Alon and I were really close, and he was so much younger than me. So it was an interesting moment that we got to be alone because we weren't really alone very often because we were always a big group of people. So that was just the 2 of us, which was really nice. The other ones, because we were such a big group of people, it was so much fun all the time. And of course, the kissing scene at the end for me was really hard because he was 15 years old. I was 20. I was 20 and he was 15. So, I mean, in the real world, I could have gotten in a lot of trouble for that. So, I was his first kiss ever, and it was on screen. So, I was really careful of that. It was very uncomfortable. Yes, he was a great kisser. We really kissed.
I'm a good kisser too.
But other than that, and Suzanne and I got really, really close then, so of course all the scenes with her were really fun. That's it.
I had a funny story for you guys. You want to hear some real funny inside? Can I keep it real for a second? Permission granted? When we were doing that rocket scene, like Vernon had described, this rocket was on a real hydraulic built under the house in stage 27, which is the biggest stage in Universal Studios. This was a very expensive, very elaborate setup, and it was one take only. When that thing came through, there was 5 or 6 cameras set up from different angles, and it was a big deal. There was a stunt coordinator, there was like the engineers, the head of the studio showed up that day, all the cameramen, the extra cameramen, and the assistants, and it was a big deal. So we really were very meticulous. John was very meticulous with Anthony Michael Hall, Alon, Robert, and I, and where we were going to be positioned, what we were supposed to do, and it was very important to hit certain lights and certain marks. Again, because this is a one-time deal, and if it goes wrong, it's like a $150,000 shot. So we get everything organized, the cameras are in place, roll camera A, roll B, C, it's really going down. And of course, everybody's like, really anticipating, and we all know exactly what we're supposed to do. And just before John Hughes calls action, Anthony Michael Hall farts. And it was horrid. And all of a sudden, I just go, oh my God, right? And Downey goes, Jesus! And Michael just passes it to us. Excuse me for the graphicness, and I wanted to throw up. And so I back up, and the action gets called, and the frickin' rocket comes through, breaks through the hardwood floors, and is coming up, and we're all going, oh, dude! I punch him in the arm, and John Hughes has a conniption. Joel Silver, who's the producer of the movie, has got a reputation for being one of the hardest core producers. He came in screaming at the top of his lungs at us, F up the shot! And I just go, he farted. This is what they had to deal with.
Oh, this happened all the time on the
So
set too.
if you look at the movie, what we had to do was we had to do the whole thing in reverse. We had to go to our end mark, and when they brought the rocket back down, they shot from an angle where you wouldn't be able to see the floor. Now, some of the camera angles in the beginning were okay because they were of our feet and of the floor. So in the movie, you could actually see the rocket piercing through the different stories of the house. But for our shot and our reaction, they had to do that in reverse. So they actually hydraulic the same setup as the first one, but they hydraulic the rocket back down. So instead of being here and reacting to the rocket coming out, I had to start here and react to the rocket as it was going down like it was coming up. This was all because Michael ate beans or something. And it was one of those things you look back on and it was like brilliant memory, but like, man, we got in so much trouble for it. And I think Michael must have got about 6 Charlie horses that day for the pressure that we kept getting, because, you know, it wasn't like, okay, great, we fixed it and everything's cool. It was like, they resented us. So that was one of the funny stories.
They did that a lot on set, though, I have to say. It was a crazy, fun set. The boys played, we all played, and everybody always got in trouble, but all in love and fun. I think you were the only one.
Yeah, I got in trouble quite a few times. We were pranking each other constantly. I mean, that's just, the other things are probably not like suitable to tell. Some of our humor was really immature.
They were very much like Max and Ian.
And not much has changed in my own home. But, you know, I mean, John also knew when he got us together. I mean, that's exactly why we were all cast for that movie. There was a camaraderie that we had. It was a magic time in my life, you know, now on a different level to get real. I was 19 years old, and I was working with some of the best people in Hollywood. We made fast friends from the first day of rehearsal. A quick one on the first day of rehearsal. I show up, I go into John Hughes' office in Universal Studios. This is brilliant, man. This is an experience. I've been working really hard and really striving. And you know, at 19, you pretty much arrived. Even if I don't do another movie for the rest of my life, no one's ever going to take this away, because I get to be a part of an iconic filmmaker and what is now called classic film. So I'm sitting in rehearsal, and we all get introduced to each other, and it's very cordial in the beginning. I'm minding my manners, and John's really super cool and really, I think, great at making everybody feel really comfortable. We have, you know, nice snacks out, and parking places reserved for us. Everything was very special. And the only person that hadn't showed up yet was Anthony Michael Hall. Anthony Michael Hall was already very established. John Hughes,
16 Candles.
16 Candles, what's the one?
Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club. You know, he was already, John Hughes had written Vacation, the National Lampoon Vacation. So they had quite a history, and Michael was already very comfortable. And he showed that in the first minute that he walked in, about 20 minutes late. He had a t-shirt and some baggy khakis with no shoes. And he walks in, he goes, "What's up, everybody?" And he goes, "You gotta check out this new track." Now remember, this is 1984, and he pops in this DVD, which I hadn't even seen one yet. And he hits the button, and it's Stevie Ray Vaughan's new album, and he just cranks it to like 15. And we all look at each other, and we're just like, holy shit, this guy's over comfortable. We're in the middle of Universal Studios, it's just like, yeah, check it out, right? And Stevie Ray Vaughan just started jamming on this killer sound system. And you know how it broke the ice? We all stood up and we danced through that whole album. That was like our first day of meeting. And it was like, to me, that was one of the most special times in my life, because instead of the whole thing being this cordial, for me, which might have been an uptight first day on a film, was like this moment of like what Robert kind of reiterated to me at the mall, which is, man, all you gotta do is come from right here. You know, you don't gotta overthink it, you don't gotta act, you just gotta be. And it was one of those moments when we were all dancing together in John Hughes' office, and John Hughes was grooving too, and he has no rhythm. Very, very white with two left feet. But, you know, that was one of those moments too where, like, I think that instantly bonded us. And that's what one of the keys were to his films, was capturing the relationship with the actors as the characters so that they came alive on screen. Because everything that he wrote, according to him, was based on him growing up in Chicago and people that he had met in his life. Max, Ian, Gary, Wyatt, Deb, Billy. I think the only person that he hadn't met was someone like Vernon's character. But that's where John Hughes' imagination comes into play and mixes that little child imagination that he had spoke of with capturing a little bit of like a Norman Rockwell reality piece of his own life, which all of his movies, I think, have a little taste of.
How long did it take you to film? How long did it take to film English?
3 months.
Were you go back and forth for Universal, Chicago, did all the Chicago stuff?
We did a rehearsal at Universal, and then we went to Chicago, and then we came back and we were at Universal.
You know, we had a really interesting thing happen to us also, is that we were in rehearsals for 2 weeks, right? We were in rehearsal for 2 weeks, and then we went to Chicago to shoot. There was a different Lisa. I don't know if you all know that. Okay, that's so nice. So I don't know if you guys all know this, but I actually am selling it in the script that says, "Who's the blonde girl?" Because Lisa was actually blonde. She was a top supermodel of the day named Kelly Ember. She was like the biggest supermodel of the day. Gorgeous. Her boyfriend was Rod Stewart, who was the biggest musician of the day at that time. And she was in rehearsals with us and went to Chicago with us. We had all become very close. We shot the first day. You see everybody in their costumes. She shot. The next day we show up, and there's a brunette, Kelly LeBrock, in the same clothes. Kelly Ember was gone. Kelly LeBrock was in. They both were named Kelly. You had to be Kelly to be Lisa. And it was such a strange moment for all of us, because we were so used to, we become a family. And then one day, we weren't told. It was just a replacement.
I was heartbroken because every day I would look at Kelly Ember in her eyes and say, "Leave Rod and go away with me. I love you."
So it was a blonde without an English accent.
Yeah, and then she got fired, and I was devastated. And then Kelly LeBrock showed up on the first day, and I was like, leave Victor Dre and run away with me. I love you.
We all had those moments. Mine was better with Kelly LeBron. She tried to smack me today. For real.
What'd you do to her?
Had a big mouth. I did something that I learned very quickly you don't do in this country, and that's actually say something. I was doing an interview after the film, and the guy that was doing the interview said to me, "Tell me, what is it like to work with the most beautiful woman in the world?" And I went, "Have you seen her at 7 o'clock in the morning?" That became the headline. I ran into Kelly when she was married to her chop suey husband. And it was a function. And I was walking across the dance floor and I heard a scream and I sort of looked around and Kelly was coming at me with a knife in her hand. And thankfully, her husband had his arm around her waist, holding her in the air and saying, "Kelly, you can't kill him in here, people will see it." She didn't speak to me for about 10 years, and I was at an AIDS function, and she was one of the models. And I was sitting at a table, and I glanced across, she was coming across the floor, and I went, "Put all the knives away." And we were all cleaning comfortably off the tables. And she walked up behind me, and she just stood there, and she just looked at me, and she went, "Where the fuck are you?" Give me a big cuddle and a kiss, and that was the end of it. But yeah, she was going to kill me. And it was a joke that I said to this guy.
Awkward.
Yes.
You know what? It's probably my favorite scene of the movie.
So we all had those moments.
What was yours, Suzanne?
You know what? I love the scene when we're all in bed and yeah,
That was in the movie.
No, we're
Which
all
version
the
was
four.
this?
It was when the four of us were in the bed and Chet comes in and he's supposed to hit us on the head with a gun.
Yeah.
I could not stop laughing because she was so funny because he kept coming up with these hysterical lines and he hit me so hard on the head. That was what the tape was because it was the only time it was really like, oh, it really hurt me. So that was a really fun scene to do, and the scene in the kitchen when it was all blue. Oh yeah, we could not stop.
We were laughing because the grandparents
So hard because they were
in the closet.
frozen in the closet. And the older woman, she couldn't stop. Oh my God, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, she died. She's. I was like, I mean, we were laughing. So that was a really fun scene.
We had something added after, there was about a month or two after the principal shooting was finished, where they had added a scene for the front and back of the film, which was the gymnasium scene. So I had already gone on to do Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, and they called me in the middle of filming Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 and asked me to come in because there was going to be some pickup shots. So I showed up and I looked on the call sheet for the next morning and it said all of us, Suzanne and Judy and Robert and Michael and Alon and I, and 100 female gymnast extras. Right? So I called Michael and I called Robert and I was like, "Dude, did you see the call sheet?" And they were just like, "See the clock, click." And that wound up really being so much fun because we hadn't seen each other in a while. And you know how great things in your life are great, but then like 2 months later, you look back on it and it's even more special. And then when you get a chance to revisit it, it's sort of like rehab. Did I just say that out loud? I'll never be able to take that back. Going back and hooking up with everybody and then being able to see the crew and John and the cast, 100 female gymnast extras, and do this scene and shoot for a couple of days again was so much fun, especially because it was so, I thought it was one of the funniest moments. Just in the opening, like, you don't know what to expect, and all of a sudden, the pantsing thing was something that my friends and I used to do to each other all the time. Like, in the most crowded, most embarrassing situation, we used to tie each other's pants down and go, check it out! And this had happened like many times throughout my junior high and high school experience. And I told John about that. He goes, dude, you gotta do that. And Robert was just like, you're sick. I thought I was sick, but you're sick. And I was like, check it out. So we did that scene, and then the girls react to it. And it was so much fun to do because I got the pants in like literally 40 times. I'll take two from another angle, it's fading. Michael wouldn't stop laughing. And again, excuse me for the rudeness, but one of the times I did it, he farted when I did it. I'm sorry. Yeah, like blew my face off. You know, when he was 17 or 16 and I was 19, and in that situation, I'm not ever going to be ashamed to admit how immature and raunchy our humor was, because we had so much fun, and there was so much freedom in it. And as an actor and as a ham my whole life, and being able to utilize my experiences of my own life, because I was never a bully. I never bullied people in school ever, but I always did with humor. And I always did to the point where I would say, you can't catch me. You know, I was never that guy that physically bullied kids in school and took their lunch money, but I was always like, and I always had a comment, and then when the guys that were tougher than me would get bummed out and go to kick my ass, they couldn't catch me. And that's what Max was. The funny thing too is that I was, like I said, I was going to acting class, and I was auditioning, and I was, you know, really attempting to be an actor for a good solid year. And I was getting discouraged. I mean, I thought, man, I've paid my dues. I had no idea what I was talking about. And I'd been going to auditions, and I'd been getting callbacks, and I was getting close, but I wasn't landing anything. And the funny thing is that when my manager sent me the Weird Science script, and I read that script that night, I told my mom, I was still living at home, and I told my mom, if I don't get this movie, I'm joining the Marine Corps. I swear to God, like, for real, I'm going to join the Marines, because if this is exactly who I was in school. Pranking, and always immature, and the center of attention, class clown, and with all this potential, you know. And that kind of bully that Max and Ian were. Making people the butt of the joke, but really not being, being likable bad guys, sort of. And so the funny thing is that when I went to read for the movie, John Hughes cast us right on the spot. And it was one of like the most thrilling days of my life, because he said, you're Max, you're cast, you're done. And I was like, what? And he goes, you're cast, you got the job, you got the part, you're Max. And I literally ran out of his office, and I was screaming down the middle of Universal Studios. And people knew, like, you know, like studio guys and like crew guys, they're like, hey! Just running by, because I'm just like, you know, I'm ecstatic. And I went right to the phone, and I called my mom, and I said, Mom, I'm not joining the Marine Corps! And she said, you got the job, you sucker, really? And I was like, yeah. And it was really amazing.
You know, I'm going to say about other casting things, because I love hearing this kind of thing, the behind the scenes that people don't know. So actually, Robert Downey Jr. was not the first one cast as Ian, either. I don't know if you guys care about those two in here. It was a guy named Craig Sheffer. Do you guys know who he is from That Was Then, This Is Now?
River Runs Through It.
River Runs Through It with Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt's brother in the movie.
Blonde. Again, blonde. Yeah, it was and Robert and I and Craig and Crystal Bernard from Wings, the show Wings, we had all tested together. And the three of us got it. And then Craig chose to do That Was Then, This Is Now instead. And that's when they brought in Downey. And that's how Downey ended up in the role. I'm so glad it happened that way. It would have been such a different movie, completely different movie. Craig's great, but this part was Downey's.
It was funny, yeah, we did get cast together, and then I was surfing outside of my house in Playa del Rey, and my brother was whistling for me at the beach, and he waved me in, and he said, Universal has been calling, you're supposed to be at Universal Studios in like 30 minutes. They've been calling you for 3 hours, something went down, you gotta jam over there right now. So I jammed as fast as I could with the IROC Z28 that they had rented me. Hell yeah! All my friends were jealous. And I literally ran in with sand still at my feet, and I was like, what's going on? I didn't know what was up. And Jackie McNamara,
Yeah.
whatever, the casting director, they're still.
At the time, she was McNamara, I think.
She said that Craig went to go do S.E. Hinton's That Was Then, This Is Now with Emilio Estevez, and that they're replacing him. And there's a kid by the name of Robert Downey Jr. sitting in the office, and we just flew him in from New York, and they want to read you two together. And I was like, okay. So I got my board shorts and my T-shirt, and there's Robert in a suit. And he's just looking at me. I love Robert Downey Jr. We're still really, really good friends. And he's looking at me, and I go, hey man, I go, how you doing? He goes, so. I was like, slap the shit out of this kid. And I said, I guess we're going to be reading together. Do you want to go through it a couple times before you go in? He goes, no. I was like, does he like me? Honestly, we went in and we did the reading, and I was in awe right away of his uniqueness, his spontaneity, his comfortability. I knew right away that I had something to learn from him. We instantly hit it off, instantly, because he got cast the same way. John Hughes was laughing, and through his laughter, because I started working off him, and we did this scene when we were describing Devin Hilli's toes with frothing eggnots and all this stuff. And I never heard anything like, they're reptiles. He was doing this whole thing, and it was much different than the way Craig and I had approached the role. And so when they cast him on the spot, he said, time out, because you're Ian, you're cast. And Robert Downey said, thought I wasn't. And I was like, this guy's the cockiest dude I've ever met. And we walked out, and I was like, congratulations. And he was like, yeah, man, cool. He goes, what are you doing right now? He went to come to my room. And I was like, I knew you liked it. No. And we came up, and we had a glass of champagne to celebrate, and I met his girlfriend, Sarah Jessica Parker, and they were quite an item. And from that day, we became best friends. It was really cool. You know, when you just connect with somebody. And what the funny thing was that I wound up liking him in that way.
Also, Dad was Hilly and Hilly was Dad, just so you know. We also changed parts, Suzanne and I.
Boy, I feel left out. I only have one funny story. Is when I came over here, they put me up in this hotel on the Universal lot, the Black Tower. They had shaved my head into a mohawk, and the management of the hotel requested that I not walk around the lobby of the hotel with a mohawk because I was scaring the guests. Because I wore these jeans that back in that time wasn't really the fashion. They had torn knees, and the butt was torn out of a musket.
You had tears in your jeans!
Totally. And it was I was just in awe of everything. There was just this amazing thing. I had this suite of rooms, and I kept sleeping in the one because I was scared they'd lose me. And I walked down the first morning, I came downstairs, and there's a guy standing in the foyer, and he walked up and he said, Mr. Wells, and I thought, I knew it was a dream. They've arrested me. He was all dressed in black. He said, I'm your driver, sir. And I went, I'm sorry. He said, I'm your driver. And I went, the studio's 300 yards away. He said, yes, sir. I'm your driver. You're going to drive me to the studio? I said, you know what? We're on top of a hill, and I really like to walk. Do you mind if I walk down? He said, they'll fire me, sir. I went, what? He said, if I don't take you, they will fire me. You kidding? He said, no. I said, okay, we've got to work something out here. So I tell you what, you drive down and wait for me at the gate, and I'll walk down, and then you can drive me in. He said, no, sir, that won't work. Oh, dear God. He said, well, I don't want to drive down the bloody hill. I want to walk. He said, I'll drive beside you, sir. You can hold the handle of the door, and we'll talk. Serious to God. Every morning, he would drive down the hill with me, jogging along beside the car, holding the handle of the door, talking to him. And when we got to the gate, he would stop, I would climb in, and he would drive me in and let me out at the studio. I thought it was the most ridiculously funny thing that had ever happened to me in my whole life. But that was my kind of introduction to making movies in America.
It was also really fun on the set because they had all the coolest musicians of the time come and visit, and they made it really fun. Billy Idol, who were all the people? The English Beat, who was really big at the time.
Well, we saw the screening of Purple Rain before it came out.
Before it came out, they took us to one of the screening rooms at Universal.
And Bruce Springsteen came to the set because one of his musicians was friends with Joel from childhood.
I went to dinner with them.
Yeah.
What about Oingo Boingo?
Yeah.
Yeah, was Danny Elfman on the set?
Danny Elfman came by a couple of times, and you know, he was really very popular from Oingo Boingo, and not yet popular as who he's become now, which is one of the top composers, scorers in the business. I mean, he's brilliant, you know. And they're right. I
He
mean,
does all the Tim Burton movies.
I got another funny story for you. I got a fucking million of them. You guys want to hear one more? All right. So I was walking with Michael, Robert, Bill, Joel, and John out of the commissary back to the stage 27. And as we were walking out, up comes Scott Baio, and the producer and the director from his new show. And of course, as we start to cross paths, the producers, hey Joel, hey John, how you doing? Hey Bill, you know, what you guys doing? And he goes, oh, you know, this is my director John Hughes, and this is our cast, and we're shooting Weird Science over on stage 27. That was fantastic. Because this is my buddy, Bill something, whatever, and this is our star, Scott Baio, and we're doing a new show called Charles in Charge. Great. I was just like, whatever, right? So they start to introduce us, and they say, you know, this was me just being what we were speaking about earlier, just totally inappropriate, totally immature, absolutely no boundaries. I'll never regret it. He says, Michael Hall, Scott Baio. Scott Baio? And Scott Baio shakes his hand, and I noticed that he flexed his arm and was staring at his own arm, and I thought that was really ridiculous. So then he does the same thing. Bill Paxton, Scott Baio, he shakes his hand, he looks at his arm again, and goes to Robert Downey and shakes his hand, and does the same thing, and Robert just looks at me like, I know you're going to do something. And Scott comes up to me and he goes, yeah, this is Robert Russell, this is his first film. Scott shakes my hand, he goes, how you doing, Scott Baio? And I go, Robert Russell. I go, look, when you get done from the commissary, we're going to be shooting over at stage 27. And then Michael just yells, suck on his balls! And we start doing this whole thing, and we're like humping down the street, and he was mortified. And John was just like this. And Joe's like this. My cast is funnier than your cast. And it was really funny because I ran into Scott Baio like many times throughout my life, and he'll never let me live that day. You asshole.
Speaking of which, though, Universal was such a great place to be working then. It was really like the most fun high school ever, because we were on stage 27. There was a sitcom right on the corner that was called ER, not the ER you guys know of. It was a sitcom called ER starring George Clooney. Not the ER you know of. His first sitcom was called ER. And so he was shooting there, and then we had Silver Spoons, we had Charles Charge, we had, who were some of the other ones?
Back to the Future.
Oh, Back to the Future, another casting. They seen girl casting. We watched it being filmed with Eric Stoltz in the role. And they were right, there with, and of course we know Eric Stoltz didn't do it. It was Michael J. Fox. They changed him
So
out.
Eric Stoltz ran away with Kelly Embert.
Yeah, they ran away. But so they were shooting Back to the Future, and then there was a few days where St. Elmo's Fire, they were there. So it was Rob Lowe and Amelia, all those guys. So the commissary was always so much fun, and everybody would meet up. And it was just,
Hey, Mr. Spielberg, how's it going, buddy? All right, good to see you.
it was literally like that. I mean, this is what the lot was like at Universal when we were shooting there. So it was the most fun time that probably I don't think it's like that anymore. I mean, I don't know, but at that time in 1984, fall of 1984, it was the most fun place to be.
Hey, Scott, how's it going, baby?
And speaking about people being changed out of roles, I actually, when I finished the film, our beloved producer, Joel Silver, took me around to all the major casting agents in Los Angeles, because he was very proud of who I was, and asked me if I would do his next film, which was called Commando. And it was starring this bodybuilder called Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know. I had no idea who he was. And I was like, sounds good. And he said, okay, I'll set up a meeting with the director. The director hated me instantly and said that I would be too much like the character I played in Commando, and he didn't want me, and that was the end of that. So I went back to Australia and did another film with a very famous English actress, Rachel Ward. And about 2 months later, I got a phone call. One of my friends, at that time, a little bit like Robert, I was a very horny young man. And I could be in any one of a dozen different apartments in Melbourne. And my roommate got the call and set out to find me. So he went to every apartment. And finally he found the one I was at. And he said, you've got a phone call from Joel Silver, you have to ring him back. And I was like, oh, come on, dude, I'll do it tomorrow morning. And he was like, no, actually, he demanded that when I found you, I'd drag your butts kicking and screaming to the phone and call you now. And I said, oh, for God's sake, what? So I rang Los Angeles, and of course the time difference meant that they were actually up when I was in bed. And I rang Joel and I said to Mr. Vernon, and he said, you've got 12 hours to pack your life and get to the airport. There's a ticket waiting for you to bring you back to Los Angeles. And I was like, for what? He said, for Commando. And I said, I didn't get Commando, Joel, in case you've forgotten. He said, no, there was a little change in cast. They had been filming for 3 weeks. The gentleman that was cast in the role I eventually did was a method actor. I love method actors. God help us all. He had decided that his role in life was to torture Arnold Schwarzenegger, because that was his character. So he would go into his dressing room and destroy everything. He would write slogans on his mirror in lipstick, I'm going to kill you, you mother. And to the point where after 3 weeks, Arnold went to Joel Silver and said, you got a choice. It's me or him. So he was fired. And I was brought over from Australia and got the role, and that's kind of it. So a little bit like I was saying, sometimes it's really funny that somebody else gets the role, doesn't suit the role, gets cast out of the role and you get cast into the role, and it's the biggest thing that ever happens to you. It's that whole thing of fate.
That method actor is Scott Baio.
I would learn on films like Commando, which as an audience we all love for specific reasons, because there's a lot of action in it. It's got deep plot stuff in it, but also
It had a plot.
one-liners in it. So what's it like on set when Arnold like throws the pipe through you? He's like let off some steam, the steam's coming out of the pipe. Do people like loving that he's saying it and think it's funny, or like what's that like on set when that happens?
Two things. Number one, we're actually talking about another movie, but I will answer your question, but please.
I'll be right back.
We have,
When you gotta go.
see, now you pissed me off.
Just hold on just one moment, please.
I don't want to get into talking about other films I've done, but I'll answer your question on that. And it's like everything. Number one, Commando did not have a plot. I'm sorry. It was a 1980s schlock movie that turned out to be really fun. It was like a throwback to the old style. Arnold's gun never ran out of bullets. You could see the stuntmen being flung into the air when they got blown up. If you watch a couple of those sequences really carefully, you can see all the cardboard cutouts fall down when the explosions go off. It was fun. It was just a fun movie. The most terrifying moment of my life in that film was watching Arnold Schwarzenegger stand at the top of a 6-foot ladder with a large 4-inch pipe in his hand, grinning insidiously at me and going, "You're going to suffer, Wells," and hurling that pipe with all his might into my chest. And all I had on my chest to protect me was a 4x4 pad. And if the line that pipe went down had it broken, I probably would have been talking with a much higher voice and not a happy person. That was the most terrifying part. The worst part was that they put a rig on my body for that scene with the steam that had steam, red hot steam coming through it. To make everything cool, they had refrigerated coolant going through from another pipe. The problem was that the refrigerated coolant froze inside the pipe, and I was holding the pipe because it was very heavy. I was holding it down on an angle towards the floor. When they said action, I held it up, and all that red hot water that had got behind the steam, and I mean it was scalding hot, came for 3 feet, came down the pipe into my rig and roasted me. So I was a screaming wreck. They ripped all of the stuff off me. I looked like I'd been sunburned really badly. And what saved me from having skin grafts for the rest of my life was that one of the girls who was on the set grabbed hold of me, and she had a whole thing of saran wrap. This is honest to God truth. She grabbed hold of me and got the saran wrap and wrapped it around my body continuously until she had wrapped me up like a mummy. And that stopped the air getting to all the burns, and so they never became blisters and all the rest of it, and I don't have a mark. But that was it, and that's all I want to talk about on that, because we're here for these guys and not for my crap.
Is it over?
Ah, shit.
Just getting started. So one day on the set,
Can we just, was there any other questions? We talked so much. Was there any questions that you guys, anybody was dying to know?
we don't want to hear them talk.
Yeah, cheers.
Kidding.
No?
Any questions? More questions?
Come on, one final question for the girls.
Come on, anything?
Were they good in bed? I don't know. Oh, I do know about it. I'm sorry, no.
Okay, yes, we
You
answered.
said earlier you switched roles. What was the reason for that? How far along the process?
I got fat.
No, it was because Craig went out and did that with Dennis now, and they replaced him with Downey. So when Downey and I stood next to them, they thought we were better matched for Suzanne and I to be boyfriend, girlfriend, and because they were short.
Because I'm taller than you. Because I'm taller
Yeah.
than you. Yeah.
And Robert's short, and she's short.
And Michael's tall, and Iman was still.
And Alon and Robert were short, and so was I. It worked that way.
And then I'm dark complected, and she's light. They just thought it contrasted well.
Oh, the whole fat thing, just so you understand when I said that, is because we'd gotten the roles, and we didn't start shooting for 5 weeks after we got the roles. Suzanne had gotten her wisdom teeth pulled in that time. I, on the other hand, had gone to Europe and ate my way through Europe. So when we came back to start shooting, Joel Silver, this iconic producer who's very mean, was like, you have to lose that weight right now. If you don't lose that weight, you know that little part at the beginning of the movie Jill Whitlow plays? Well, Jill Whitlow's going to be taking your part unless you lose that weight because you're a fat, ugly pig. Dead serious.
He was a very polite man.
Dead serious.
Isn't that horrible?
And I would be eating carrots on set, going, okay, I never lost, I weighed 107 pounds, you guys. And I was eating carrots, and he literally would walk by me and go, you're still a fat, ugly pig.
Yes, nice man.
That's when the fat life kicked in.
You know, just to finish up, because I guess we are out of time, we want to, on behalf of the cast, thank you guys for coming up and listening to us. You know, Weird Science was, as we all will attest to, hey man, when you're an actor and you get to make a film like that, you know, it lasts through all time. Forget about just the money and those beautiful residuals just for a second, because we're still getting paid for those movies, which is
Did you get the 3-cent check last week?
28 years ago, you know, and it still holds up because of the director, because of the casting, and the music and everything that is that recipe for a cult classic. Being a part of that, you know, I'm just proud. You know, I feel honored, and my kids are super stoked that their daddy is Max, and they watch the movie over and over and over, and they know all the lines. And then when I go to pick up my kids from school, all their friends know the movie, and the parents, the mothers, they're like, hey, hi, Max. It's really funny, but we just want to say thank you for coming out and appreciate you guys attending and, you know, coming over to our booth this weekend, and that's what we're here for. We're here to meet you guys and take pictures, and, you know, Phantom Fest has been really cool to us, so, you know, again, just say thank you, you know, thank you very much.
Yeah. If you got nothing better to do, come over and do it.